Toi qui, comme un coup de couteau, dans mon cœur plaintive entrée. These words, like a knife thrust, introduce us to the poetry of Charles Baudelaire. His verses wound as they seduce, their beauty tinged with a darkness that shocked 19th century France. Baudelaire's words are not mere ink on paper. They are visceral experiences filled with longing, despair, and a haunting beauty. He doesn't shy away from the dark underbelly of life. He embraces it. In 1857, Baudelaire unleashed Les Fleurs du Mal, Flowers of Evil, upon the world. This single volume of poetry, a symphony of the profane and the profound, became a lightning rod for controversy. Its exploration of themes like love, loss, heartbreak, spirituality, and longing for another world bestowed to the poem's dark romantic mood. But pointing out the hypocrisy of the society outraged the sensibilities of the French bourgeoisie. The French government, ever the guardian of public morality, took Baudelaire to court. He was charged with offending public decency. 6 of the poems were deemed too scandalous for public consumption and were banned. The trial, a sensation in its day, only served to amplify Baudelaire's notoriety. He became a cause célèbre, a symbol of artistic freedom against the constraints of a hypocritical society. How could a single volume of poetry cause such a stir? Baudelaire, a master of language, crafted verses that were both melodic and unsettling. He used language not merely to describe, but to evoke, to shock, to seduce. His poems are filled with vivid imagery, sensual language, and a pervasive sense of melancholy that resonated with a generation yearning for something more. There's a musicality to Baudelaire's verse, a rhythm and rhyme that draws the reader in, only to confront them with images that are both beautiful and disturbing. This juxtaposition, the sacred and the profane, the beautiful and the grotesque, is at the heart of Baudelaire's genius. To understand the darkness in Baudelaire's poetry, one must look to the shadows of his own life. Born in Paris on the 9th of April 1821, Charles Baudelaire's childhood was marked by loss and upheaval. When he was only 6 years old, his father, a much older man, died. This loss left an indelible mark on the young Baudelaire. Adding to his woes, his mother Caroline remarried within a year to a military officer, Lieutenant Colonel Jacques Opic. This event, far from providing stability, only exacerbated Baudelaire's sense of abandonment and resentment towards his stepfather. Section 5. Bohemian Rhapsody, Wine, Women and Verse. As Baudelaire matured, he rejected the bourgeois values of his stepfather and embraced a bohemian lifestyle. He surrounded himself with artists and writers, indulging in the pleasures of the flesh and the mind. Wine flowed freely, and opium became a dangerous muse, offering escape and inspiration in equal measure. He had a string of lovers, most notably Jeanne Duval, a biracial actress who became his muse and tormentor. His relationships, like his life, were passionate, tumultuous, and ultimately destructive. Yet from this chaos, Baudelaire mined poetic gold. His experiences, however debauched, fueled his art. Section 6. The poet as social critic. While Baudelaire is often remembered for his scandalous imagery, it's important to recognize the social conscience that underpinned his work. He was deeply critical of the hypocrisy and inequality of his time. His Paris was a city of stark contrasts, where opulent wealth existed alongside abject poverty. Baudelaire saw the plight of the poor and the marginalized. He gave voice to the outcasts, the criminals, the prostitutes, those deemed unworthy by polite society. In their struggles, he saw a raw authenticity that the upper classes, with their artificial manners and morals, lacked. Section 7. Moral corruption and the upper class. Baudelaire's fascination with the underbelly of society was, in part, a reaction to the moral hypocrisy he observed in the upper classes. They were, in his view, blind to their own corruption, their wealth built on the backs of the poor, and their respectability a thin veneer covering a multitude of sins. He dared to question their assumptions, their morality, their very right to judge. His poems, often shocking in their content, were a deliberate provocation, a challenge to the status quo. Baudelaire believed that true morality lay not in blind adherence to societal norms, but in confronting the darkness within ourselves and the world around us. Section 8. The artist as prophet. For Baudelaire, the role of the artist was not merely to entertain or to please. The artist was a seer, a prophet, divinely inspired to reveal the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it might be. He believed that true art should shake us to our core, force us to confront the hypocrisy of our world, and ultimately lead us to a deeper understanding of ourselves. With Les Fleurs du Mal, Baudelaire redefined what poetry could be. He expanded its boundaries, embracing the ugly alongside the beautiful, the profane alongside the sacred. In doing so, he paved the way for generations of artists to come, those who dared to challenge convention and explore the full spectrum of human experience. Section 9. A Pilgrim's Progress. Il jouait avec le vent, cause avec le nuage, et s'enive en chantant du chemin de la croix, et l'esprit qui le suit dans son pèlerinage pleure de le voir gay comme un oiseau des bois. Baudelaire, the pilgrim, walked a path fraught with darkness and despair, but even in the depths of his suffering, he found beauty, a transcendent joy that sang out in his poetry. His legacy is a reminder that even in the darkest corners of the human experience, art can bloom.